It's like one of those, boxes you check to buy things on the internet, which you're looking at this going like, I don't have time to sort this out. And I even say that, and I'm a lawyer, but don't tell anyone. I just click them. So there's a problem. People may not know. But if he did know, if Gary Ewing did know, as he stood there outside the El Segundo Country Club with those three golf clubs in his pants, knowing he wasn't going to be able to run very fast with those three golf clubs in his pants, if he had known that he was going to get 3 strikes, what might he have done? Would he have surrendered easily to the police officers to be docilely led away? I mean, a golf club's not a bad weapon. And he might have had, and I assume if he had a gun on him, they would have gotten him for that too. So maybe he didn't have a gun. The point is, you can imagine somebody saying, there's no way I'm going down for this 3rd strike. And in fact, when you combine it with spending time in Pelican Bay, which is our supermax, where we often put people who are on 3 strikes because there's no way to gain their cooperation. When you're telling them you're probably going to die in prison before you even come up for parole, not a lot of incentive to cooperate there, so often we have to put them in a supermax facility. Those are really unpleasant. But you know what? If you kill somebody and get the death penalty, you'll never get executed. You'll have a cell to yourself in San Quentin. You'll have a lawyer visiting you, monthly. It's a much better ride. And so you're not basically to go down for a 3 strike sentence in California if you could get the death penalty instead. And that is a very problematic proposition. So I think the court is correct to see that incapacitation is the real motive behind this. And so my question here then is 3 strikes grossly disproportionate? Well, again, to the court's way of thinking, it all depends on what we think the main penal rationale is. If we're all about retribution, then we're essentially asking, does the punishment equal the moral seriousness of the crime? Is there a disparity there? And I think most of us would have to say yes, that stealing 3 golf clubs doesn't weigh out to having a life sentence. Again, you might think about other crimes that do get a life sentence, that attract a life sentence, like murder, tend to think of them as much worse than stealing 3 golf clubs. So I think you'd have to say that it's disproportionate. Is it grossly disproportionate? I think you'd have to say that, and I think the court might have said that, but they could eliminate retribution, because this is not a retributionist statute. It appears to be about either deterrence or incapacitation. What about deterrence? If something is a deterrent statute, then the goal should be that a properly proportionate punishment is one that essentially is worth the cost or the attractiveness of the crime when multiplied by the odds, discounted by, or multiplied, I should say, by the odds of getting caught. And so you need some severity there more than just what the crime might be morally worth in order to overcome that sense that they might get away with it. From that point of view, is life imprisonment for the 3 golf clubs, is that grossly disproportionate? Harder to say, right? Because what would it take to deter Gary Ewing? He's got a long criminal career, that's for sure. He's a persistent offender. He's been in and out of prison. He hasn't committed any really terrible crimes, but he's committed some pretty creepy crimes. I mean, people that go into your house while you're there to steal stuff, they didn't rape you this time, but they feel comfortable going into your house. That's different than, say, somebody who breaks into a house knowing that there's nobody home, right? Somebody who goes into your house knowing that there's somebody home is a scarier person in my book than the person who goes into your garage or when you're on vacation. And he's got a troubling record. The other thing to say about him is that he doesn't seem to get it, right? I mean, from a deterrent point of view, he's not getting the message. He keeps going back to prison. And so is this enough? Maybe it would take a really, really long sentence to get Gary Ewing's attention. Apparently, even this one wasn't enough. What about incapacitation? Well, there you'd be looking at the punishment against the cost of future crimes and the odds of those occurring to some extent. And that's really where the court finds itself unable to decide that there is a disproportionality here, at least not one that's grossly disproportionate. The court writes, we must place on the scales not only his current felony, but also his long history of felony recidivism. In imposing a 3-strike sentence, the state's interest is not merely punishing the offense of the conviction or the triggering offense. It is in addition the interest in dealing in a harsher manner with those who by repeated criminal acts have shown that they are simply incapable of conforming to the norms of society. Now notice especially this, those who have shown that they're incapable of conforming, right? So part of what you get to in incapacitation is the notion that the people you're dealing with aren't deterrable anymore. You can't really deter them. The only thing you can do to really stop them from committing crimes is locking them up, presumably forever. But again, that assumes that they're, quote, simply incapable of conforming, that they're going to keep committing crimes, and that's not going to change over time. And I want to end just 2 more slides. This is to take you to a very interesting study that my colleague Dustin McCrary did along with another econometrician named David Lee. I put it in as a recommended reading. This is one of the most brilliant and empirically exciting studies of deterrence, because mostly when we're looking at whether a penalty will affect you, we don't have very good data, and we can't really compare. It's hard to get a real measure of whether, first of all, we're dealing with people in prison, they already weren't deterred. We could ask people to self-report on their level of deterrence, but it's very difficult. Here's a very interesting project. So they found a fairly unique source of data. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement keeps on a month-to-month basis arrest records for people who have been arrested. And it begins for people at the age of 17. I think before then your records are protected. But if you've been, essentially, if you end up in this Florida Department of Law Enforcement data, if you've been arrested once before you were 17, all your other arrests on a monthly basis are recorded. And the monthly basis is very important because it allows us to take a look at a natural experiment in deterrence. If deterrence, especially the notion of manipulating the price of crime, is correct, we should be able to see a downturn in criminal behavior when there's a sudden upturn in the price of something. If suddenly we triple the price of beer, we would see some pretty visible discontinuity in the purchases of beer. And so what you have here is, because this is a monthly data set, it's very valuable because what it shows us is people's arrests as they're approaching and passing through the important 18th birthday. Very quickly, what happens in most states at 18? You get tried as an adult. You end your period of being a juvenile. And what you can think of juvenile justice as is essentially a discounted price system. It's essentially a discount for juveniles. Just like you get in the movies, it's like cheaper if you're a juvenile, you go and you're paying a slightly lower price, or significantly lower price sometimes, for the crime. And after you're 18, even though maybe you can't shave or don't need to shave any more than you did the day before you turned 18, you're an adult. Now, is everybody going to change their behavior just because they turned 18 or give up all their criminal activity? Nobody would expect that. But we would expect to see some discontinuity between the two. Now, notice 2 things about this. One is that there's a gradual but very visible decline in the arrest rate. And actually, this continues. They have another chart that shows 17 to 19, or 19 to 21, and it keeps going down. And they showed me at 51 to 53, be hugging the bottom there. So this goes down on a smooth basis for life. We got to think of that when we think about Gary Ewing. Where is he on this? If he's heading down here to 0, then paying for him to be in prison for 25 years to life is pretty nuts. But the other thing to notice is essentially no substantial discontinuity, not one that is at least statistically significant. And so it looks like this is happening without affecting the thinking or the behavior of these young people at all. Now, what McCrary and Lee determined, they don't throw out the baby of deterrence completely, but they go in a way, they go back to Beccaria, and they say, look, especially when you're dealing with young people, the certainty of punishment is much more important than severity. Why? Because young people have what economists call a high discount rate on the future. These discount rates exist, and you can test them empirically. So if you want a book from Amazon and you're willing to wait 7 days, you pay a certain price. If you have to have it tomorrow, you pay a higher price. And that price is actually a measure of how much you value the passage of time. You're willing to pay to have it now. And in crime, it's the opposite. You're willing, something that's going to happen to you tonight is something you're willing to do a lot to avoid. Something that might happen to you 5 years down the line is something that you're going to pay a lot less attention to. And so what McCrary and Lee suggest is that what this is showing us is that threatening young people with very long sentences doesn't affect their behavior. But they hypothesize if you could really raise the odds that they were going to suffer even a fairly lenient penalty, like be arrested today, have to go to jail today, you might get a different effect. And that is the good news that's coming out of our colleague Frank Zimring's research on New York, some of which Hannah LaCour was involved in looking at the data on. You can ask her more about this. But one of the things that Zimring argues happened in New York is that significantly increasing policing, especially of younger people, dramatically increased the certainty with which people considering crimes on a subway or other places confronted the possibility of punishment, resulting in a dramatic drop of crime and a reduction in the number of people in prison, right? The ultimate promise of a deterrent system, that it actually prevents crime without having to do the punishment. Now, I suggest that we may be at a moment where in California we need to, in a sense, rethink deterrence and become more critical about incapacitation. Are we really getting a good deal if we're throwing all the criminals in the same risk pot, not trying to differentiate the high rate offenders from the low rate offenders? And are we getting a good deal when we commit ourselves to imprisoning people for very long periods of time when we might guess that their actual crime rate is dropping dramatically during that period of time? We are out of time. If we're going to do one last round of, do you want? I guess we don't need to do one last round, so let me say we're not out of time. We've got a few more minutes, so let me just ask you if there are questions. Yeah.
What about the political rhetoric factoring into this? The fact that politicians seem to have latched onto this tough on crime platform as a way to perpetuate political power, and that might be interfering with the actual functioning of criminal system.
So I think that's, as we move on through the course, we're going to be looking a lot at how these motivations then get filtered by our political system. And you ask an interesting question. So when politicians promote to you that they're going to be tough on crime, what are they appealing to? They could be appealing to your sense of moral outrage at crime, but they could also be appealing to your idea that you're going to be safer. I think that they do both in California. And part of what we need to do is raise questions about each. So in terms of the moral issue, we have to actually look carefully at who's in prison, for what crimes, for how long, how much is this really worth morally. Our political process hasn't really asked those questions. But at the same time, this is a wonderful opportunity, especially with so many people who would have been in prison because of realignment ending up in the community. We have what social sciences call a natural experiment to begin to demonstrate to the public that we actually can have a level of public safety without this very high level of imprisonment. So I think it's a really exciting moment. Politicians like to talk about deterrence. If you guys probably don't remember, but way back in 2000, when the death penalty was still a debate issue in presidential debates, they asked Gore and Bush about the death penalty. They both supported it. They both said they believed it deterred. And I think one of the appeals of deterrence is that it sounds very reasonable. It kind of seems a little more problematic to say you just want to see someone suffer because they deserve punishment. But if you say, well, we need to do this to deter others, it has more moral appeal. But keep in mind that, properly understood, deterrence is a thesis of leniency. It's about reducing punishment to an optimal level. It's used as a criticism of excessive punishment, not really historically a reason to increase punishment. So I will see you next week. In the meantime, I will get out a new copy of this. I do have office hours, but this Monday I'm going to have to miss because of a public school holiday. I'm stuck home. But I will make it up to you, and I'll put out an announcement on those new office hours.